Hi, welcome to the training webinar. I'm Dale Franks. We're going to continue this week with our discussion of creating a unified approval system in Process Director. Let's do a very brief recap and begin to move on to the more advanced topics that we're going to need to discuss. So far, all we've really talked about is building a form and the data that we're going to use as the fundamental data for the form, basically to provide us with the values for our functions, whether it's accounting or IT or facilities or whatever, and then all of the different processes that we're going to use in our approval. And we've built a form template that we're going to use for all of our request forms a bit later. But with the form, it's a pretty standard form using a tabbed interface, which is not something we do very often on the webinar, but it's going to be very useful for us in this particular use case because we're going to need a tab that gives us any custom fields that we might need to make our process work. Right now, we don't have any of those fields, but later on, we are going to need some. And of course, we went through all of the data that we're going to need, as I mentioned previously, to fill our functions and our processes, because the functions and the processes are kind of a primary driver of how the process is going to work. All of this is well and good, but it's no different from what we normally do. Today, we're going to have to do a little bit of a mind shift or mindset shift in order to create the process that we are going to use for the unified approval process. There is one thing I need, and I did create the timeline last week simply to hook it up to the form. So on the form options, even the form itself, there's nothing different about the form from the way we would normally build one. But for the process itself, there are some differences. The primary difference is that we are not going to specify a form for timeline. This timeline is going to be form independent. That has several implications for how we are going to have to build and configure the timeline, because we can't depend on knowing what the form is, because the form, whatever form it might be, is going to be attached to this timeline when the form instance is submitted. It might be 1, 4, 5, 10 different forms. We don't know. So we have to be able to accommodate that. And in order to accommodate that, the first thing we can't do is set a form for timeline. Now, one thing that we do want to have is a default email template for this timeline, because we are going to kind of send the same email template all the time. Now, I don't have a form or an email template. I should probably build one real quick. We're not going to actually configure it or anything. I just want to have a template with a name so that we can associate it with our process and continue configuring it. So we're going to create a new form definition. We're just going to call this email template. And we'll hit, oh, wait a second, we won't hit OK. We have to open this up and ensure that we set it as an email template so that it doesn't treat it like a regular form. And we're not going to do anything with it right now. We just want to have an email template object, a form object that we can use as the email template for our process timeline. That means that we're going to have some special considerations on how our email template is going to look and how we're going to display information and what messages that we're going to send with this email template so that it can work across multiple forms for this process. And I have no idea why a blank form is taking so long to save. I didn't do anything, so we'll just go over here. I will, just out of I guess anal retentiveness, I will go ahead. Well, I was going to go ahead and set an icon, but now the icons don't appear to be loading in the icon chooser either. Everything seems to need to be compiled this morning. I'm not sure why. Let's give it a second. There we go. All I really wanted was my little envelope icon, which, well, now I don't know where my little envelope icon is. There it is. There we go. Little mail icon. And we'll hit OK there. We'll have to come back to that email template a bit later. But for now, we have an email template. We'll go to our approval process and we will set the default email template. Now, what we are going to do whenever we build that email template is we're going to have to, it's going to be it could be a very complex email template. I'm not going to make you sit and watch a whole bunch of email template stuff, but I don't think we're going to get to the email template this week anyway, so we'll worry about how complex that gets later. Other than that, I'm not going to make any configuration changes inside the options section. I'm just going to set the default email template. And as I said, we're going to leave the form for timeline alone because we don't know what form we're going to use. Now, because we don't know what form we're going to use, that's going to require an extensive use of system variables. And as we'll probably see a little bit later, of business rules as well. And we're probably going to have to use a lot of parameterized business rules to make this application work the way that we want it to work. For now, let's talk about our activities. The first activity I'm going to worry about is my activity to set the request number that gets set for this form. This is something that we do quite often. However, in this case, we're going to have to think a little bit more carefully about what the request number is going to be. Remember, I'm going to be submitting a form, but using the same timeline for all of my requests, whether they're IT requests or HR requests or what have you. So I'm going to need to have a more generalized method of setting the request number. Now, obviously, you could just set a sequence number and be done with it, but I don't think we want to do that. And I also think I want to cheat just a little bit. I'm going to go grab the value that I pulled or that I set on my unified approval process sample that we looked at last week. And I'm going to grab this request number from here. And it's a custom task. And I'm just using the set form data custom task. And oh my goodness, it's having to compile as well. Why is everything having to compile? So I'm going to copy this. And it's going to have to be modified a little bit because I gave the fields a little different name in the sample process, but that's fine. We're going to set this activity type for activity one. Well, we're going to set activity one to set request number, request. Let's correct our spelling. Set request number. This is going to be a custom task type. We're going to go to the custom task and we are going to go with set form data. Form. Form data mapping is what I'm looking for. Set form data. We'll add that task. And we're going to, first thing we're going to have is we're not going to have a container form. We don't know what the container form is going to be. So we have to kind of universalize what it is that we're going to do here. So on our configuration tab, again, we don't have a data source form. We're going to have to leave that blank as well. We're going to have to depend, and because we don't have a form, we can do this. If we don't have a form, there's no drop down for the form control or anything. There's just a text box, but that means that we can set the request number. Now, I don't remember what I named the request number field on the form. I think I called it RecNo, but I may have called it request, but I may have called it something different. Huh. Well, we'll see when we get there. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the process field to set my sequence number. Now, that process field, as we saw last week when we created the data, consists of a 2-digit code as the ID. So I'm going to use the 2-digit code for that process as the start of my request number. So like if it's an expense report, I think the 2-digit code for an expense report is EX. So it's going to be EX dash, and then it's going to have a number. And that number is going to have a special setup for the category for that sequence number. As you know, all sequence numbers, if you just put SEQ underscore NUM, that will just give you a count from 1 to N of however often you call it. But sequence numbers can have a category. And that category, you just type in a colon and you follow it with the category name. Now, I'm going to use system variables to set that category name. And again, I'm going to use the process, which for an expense report would be EX, for example. And then I'm going to set the current year. So I'm going to have a category that whenever this is parsed is going to be EX 2025. And of course, next year, January 1st, it'll be EX 2026. And my sequence number will restart from 1. Now, I could do some other things. For example, I could throw in a digits formatter, which I often do. I think it's digits equals 4. And that way I can ensure that my sequence number is a 4-digit number. So it would be 0001 for the very first one. And that will give me, 9,999 submissions for that particular process in a year before I roll to 5 digits. But you don't actually have to do that. I don't think I did that in the sample at all. I obviously didn't since I copied and pasted it. I don't know that my field name is RecNo, however, but for now, we are going to hit OK. And we're going to close that and we're going to hit OK because I do need to check my form to see what, in fact, I called the request number field. I don't remember what the name was. LMNOPQR routing slips. That is, I find it difficult to believe that I did not put in a request number for the form, but I certainly don't see it. So that may have been an oversight. Oh, you know what? It looks like I did not put in a request number. I completely forgot. Well, it's a good thing that I ran across that. We are going to throw in a quick table here. So we will make it 1 row and 3 columns. And we are going to put in our fields. So I should have done this last week, but it completely escaped my mind. So we will grab a label control and we'll call this, let's not call it requester. Let's call it submitter label, and we'll label it submitter. And we will associate the control with a control that we're going to call submitter, not submitter, but submitter. And I'll hit Shift Enter again to put in a break. and we will drop in a user picker that we are going to call submitter. And for our submitter user picker, we are going to go ahead and set a couple of properties. We're going to set its default value to form submit user. And we are also going to set the read-only options to disabled because this field is going to be filled automatically. For the second field, we're actually going to put our submission date in. So once again, we'll need a label control. We'll call it submission date label. The text will be submission date. And I did not put the colon after submitter, but oh well. And our control is going to be submission date. I might as well just go ahead and copy that. And we'll grab our date picker field here, which we will paste the name in as submission date. I do want to go back here to the text for my submitter label and put the colon in there. And then we'll go back here to our date picker and we'll set its field properties. Again, default value will be form submit date. And again, we are going to set this field to disabled because it gets auto field. And finally, we'll need our request number. Now, I noticed that some of you do a really cool thing, and I've never thought to do it before. I think I may have mentioned it last week, but now that I'm implementing it, let's implement it. Normally what I do is I throw the submitter on there and I set the default value as generated when submitted, and that shows up on the form itself. What I've noticed several of you doing as I've worked on customer things is you've dropped in an embedded section, and we'll call this request number section. And you set this field as field is visible when, and then we'll add our condition here. And what you do is you hide it on a new form instance. So new form instance equals no. So it is visible when new form instance equals no. It will be otherwise hidden. And that way we won't see our submission information, our submission number information until after we submit the form. I think that's a cool idea. And I think it's also a little more graceful than having generated when submitted appears under the request number. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to hide that. We are going to drop in our label control, and we'll call this the request number label. In fact, since I've already configured the custom task to use the field request or recno, R-E-Q-N-O, we're going to call this recno label and request number. And the associated control ID will be REQNO. Since I've already used that in the process timeline, well, that's what we're going to name the control, I guess. So we'll pick request number there. Again, shift enter to throw in a break. And we are just going to throw in a text box control, an input control that we're going to call recno. And again, in this case, we're not going to set a default value since nobody's going to see it. I don't need to throw that generated when submitted in there. I do, however, still want to put it in as field is disabled. And once I've done that, I can go back to layout and throw in my embedded section end for that field. So now we have a request number. It is called recno, and we will fill that field value from our custom task that we just configured. And now it has a field that's named recno. And so it will grab our request number data and fill the form field with it. So I should have done that last week. So forgive me for eliding past that. So great. There's my request number. And I just want to be sure I didn't miss anything as you know, I do this live. I want to be sure that I get it configured properly. Form control request number. Uh, okay, close. And we'll go back to our approval process. Leave. You know what? We should also do, well, we're going to have to set up a different instantiated form name for each of our forms. That'll be part of our individual forms. So we won't mess with that now. Let's go back to the process. Okay, great. We are going to set the request number. And I think I do need to go in here, and this just needs to be recno, not a form field system variable to make that work. So there we go. We're done with that. Now we have to think about how our process is going to work. This is going to be a unified approval process. So that means we're going to have several different sections for several different types of request. Now, the nice thing about Process Director is that I can organize my timeline in parent and child processes, and I can also set up parent and child loops. That's all great, and we're going to have to do that. Now, generally, we've always looked at a process timeline, certainly in the training webinar, as a much more simple creature than it needs to be. Process timelines can actually be quite complex. And so we're going to make a rather complex process timeline to make all of this work. The first thing we're going to do is we are going to create an activity. We are going to make it dependent on our set request number. And this second activity, we're going to call this the approval loop. And for the approval loop, we are going to set this as a parent activity, and we're going to set some looping conditions. We are going to want to allow for a resubmittal. So we're going to need to be able to restart the loop, and we're going to need an initiator resubmittal activity. We're also going to need to be able to cancel the loop in case my request is denied. So I'm going to need to have conditions for both. So we're going to use the same condition, which is any child activity result for the condition. So we'll go to add condition, and we'll choose timeline activity, any child activity result. And we can use equals or contains here. If we use equals, we have to be sure that we use exactly the same verbiage in every single activity. But we're going to keep it with the equal for right now. We're just going to call it resubmit. So I'm going to definitely need a resubmit result for every process, a timeline activity. If I used contains, I could be a little more loosey-goosey. So I could say request resubmittal. Well, that would work for a process timeline activity result because request resubmittal does in fact contain the word resubmit. So it does give me some freedom if I use contains. I'm going to go ahead and use equals here, and we're going to use resubmit as the standard activity, and it'll have to match exactly because we're using our equal sign. And for the cancel, we actually have to think about how our process might be canceled. And when I request an initiator resubmittal, I might want to give my initiator the ability to cancel their own request. So I'm going to need a little more complex condition, and I'm going to need, again, any child activity result, timeline activity, any child activity result. There we go. Finally found it. If it equals deny, or actually, I didn't want to close that. I wanted to add an or condition, or any child activity result. Equals cancel. So on my initiator resubmitter, I'm going to have a cancel result that will enable me to cancel out of here. And now we are going to close. We now have our outer approval loop. We've got a couple of different choices now about the big project that we are going to build with this process timeline. In the sample project that we looked at last week, whenever we were covering how it worked, I had single activities for initiator resubmission, supervisor approval, accounting approval, and whatever. So they worked in a standard way. By the way, just so that you can see, I have a cancel result for my initiator resubmittal, so that they can cancel out of that activity. And then I had single activities for accounting approval, HR approval, IT approval, and so forth. But this is a really, really simple way of doing it. We're going to do something much more complex today because we can. What we're going to do is we're going to use parent activities for each of these sub processes. They're not really sub processes, but segments. I guess that's better. So we're going to have an IT segment, and we're going to have an HR segment and a facility segment, and we're going to have to determine when those segments are going to run. And then inside each of those segments, we may have different activities that run based on what process is actually running. And I have to account for that when I build it. Now, I really don't know in detail what a facilities process looks like or an accounting process looks like. I'm just going to make some stuff up with some examples. So in our approval loop, first thing we're going to have is our initiator resubmittal activity. So we'll create another activity, and this will be a user activity. And we are going to set it to the timeline initiator. We're just going to call it initiator resubmittal. And the participant is going to be the timeline initiator. We're going to have some results. I'm not going to spend a lot of time configuring these results. I'm just going to set them. So I'm going to have a resubmit, and I'm going to have a cancel. And I guess I will go so far as to make resubmit the number 1 and cancel the number 2 activity. But that's as far as I'm going to go. But I do need that cancel activity because I have to be able to cancel out of this process timeline. And I am going to need a start when condition. And I'm going to want to start it whenever any of the activity results are. There's a couple of different ways to do this. I think I did it in a more elegant way on the approval process over here. And I want to copy what I did there because I want this thing to work as much out of the box as possible. So I am going to have to beg your indulgence for how this works. Needed when when the activity result for approval loop is resubmit. Okay, that's what I did. So we'll do the same thing down here. I don't need to save that. So we'll go to our initiator resubmittal. We don't need to make it dependent on anything. What we do need to do is we need to drag it under our approval loop. Well, that made it dependent, which is exactly what I didn't want to do. I must have hit the wrong label. Drag under another parent. That's what I want. No, it still didn't do it. Well, I don't know why my dragging isn't working. Drag to move under another parent. Okay, that's not working. Darn. Why won't it make it a child activity? All right. We're going to have to redo this over. We are going to have to create not a dependent activity. Wow, I am trying to cowboy my way through this and getting it wrong. I want to create a child activity. There we go. Activity 2.1. And this is going to be my initiator resubmittal participant timeline initiator. We're going to have to add the two results here. So resubmit. And I really do need to have probably more configuration on these things because I'm going to need task instructions and everything else. But for now, what we'll do is we'll just do the bare bones configuration. And I'll go back in and backfill all the cool little properties later because there's no reason to sit and watch me do all of that. Timeline activity result for my approval loop equals resubmit. I've just come up with a problem. I restart the loop if my activity result equals resubmit. And so that means that my results for this activity can't be resubmit. There's a reason why I called it revised, and that's why I want to have a revised result. If I call it resubmit, it's going to restart the approval loop, and I don't want to do that. So we're going to call this revised and cancel. I know I need cancel, but what I really don't need is resubmit unless I want that result. So there's my initiator resubmittal. I'm going to create one more child activity. This is going to be my supervisor. And I did it again. I need to create a child activity. And this one we're going to call supervisor approval. No matter what you do, you're probably going to need supervisor approval. So we're going to have a supervisor approval activity. And here is where it's about to get tricky. We're going to do the results first. And we're going to add a result. And we're just going to have 3. We're going to have approve, which is going to be our first button. We're going to have resubmit because that's what restarts our loop. And we'll make that the number 2 result. And we're going to need a deny because that escapes our loop. So we're going to have that approve, resubmit, and deny routinely. We need resubmit and deny because our entire approval loop depends on those 2 results for how it's going to operate. And deny is going to be our number 3 result. And while we're here, we'll set our dependency on initiator resubmittal. So that will happen after initiator resubmittal. We set a needed when on initiator resubmittal, by the way, for the activity result for the approval loop as resubmit. So it will only run whenever I've got an active resubmit result on the approval loop. So that's good. And so far, so good. Now we have to get to our segments and the activities within those segments. And here's where we have to start thinking carefully about how we want our process to work and how we're going to determine what actions run when. So we're going to create another child activity, and we are going to make it dependent on the supervisor approval. But this activity we're going to call accounting approval. Must have hit the caps lock. Accounting approval. And this activity type is going to be a parent activity. Generally, when we create parent activities, we do so for looping purposes. We're not concerned about looping here. What we're really concerned about is our method of organization. We are going to have 4 different segments for each of the possible function types that we have. I've defined 4 function types. We're going to need those 4 sections to set off all of our approvals for that particular function in their own section. That also means that since this is accounting approval, I only want this activity to run if I have chosen accounting as the function. Now, because this is a parent activity, parent activities don't do anything in and of themselves, but they still respond to the same sort of needed when conditions. So in this case, my needed when condition, I'm going to have to do it a little bit differently. Now, remember, I don't know what form or how many forms I'm going to have ultimately that are going to kick off this approval process. That means that any time that I begin to set conditions which are form-based, I'm going to have 2 options. I'm either going to have to use a parameterized business value to which I can send some sort of parameter and return data from that business, or not business value, business rule. So I'm going to need to send a parameter to the business rule and return the appropriate data. Or I'm going to have to use a form field system variable to make it work. Now, in most cases, we can use a form field system variable. I'm also going to set up an alternative method using the business rule that's parameterized a little bit later. But we're going to start off with just using form field system variables. Now, the nice thing about form field system variables is that whenever a form, whatever form it happens to be, invokes this process, that form is going to be attached to the timeline instance as a form attachment. And that form will automatically have the form context that process director looks for if we use a form field system variable. So whenever I create these conditions, I'm going to have to use either a form field system variable or a parameterized business rule system variable to grab the data I need to make all of this stuff work. The nice thing about the form field system variables is that not only can I use them here in the process timeline, but later on, when I begin creating knowledge views and I want to return form field values in a knowledge view, I'm going to have the same problem in that I can't associate the knowledge view with a form instant or a form definition. Usually when you're returning knowledge use, you're returning form instances and you're returning form instances of a specified form definition. I'm not going to be able to make a knowledge view like that. I'm going to have to I'm still going to be able to return form instances, but I'm going to associate the knowledge view with the process, the timeline definition, not the form definition, which means I'm going to get a whole bunch of different form instances from different form definitions. That's okay. As long as I know the name of the form field, I can use the form field system variable and pull that data back. So I just created a form field for submitter, right? Okay, great. I have a submitter, and that is going to be on my form template because that's all we've created so far. And because every form is going to have a submitter, I can use the form field system variable for submitter. And it doesn't matter what form is associated with that process timeline instance, it's going to return the value of the submitter field on that form. I just have to ensure that all of my forms obviously have that field so that I can make that work. But as long as I do that, that makes system variables very, very powerful in this context. So I am in activity 2. It still says activity 2.3, but it is in fact accounting approval. And I am creating a needed when condition for this activity. So I'm going to need to use the form field system variable, because if you remember a few minutes ago, I said that function field and that process field is going to drive a lot of how the process timeline works. So I'm going to have to grab the value from that process field or function field and be sure that it is in fact the accounting function that I am using on this particular form submission. So to do that, I'm going to have to pull this as a string. And I am going to have to set this as function, because it's the function field that determines whether it's accounting, IT, what have you. So I'm going to need to read the function field. Now, what I didn't do is put the colon there, so it wasn't a valid system variable, but now it is. So I'm going to use the form field system variable for function. And it's going to have to equal, and again, it wants a form field. Process Director wants me to associate a form field so badly, but I can't. That's why I have to use these system variables. So function, and once again, we're going to have to go to a string here, and I believe my accounting function is AC. So if my function equals AC, then that's when this accounting approval segment needs to run. So I'm going to go ahead and hit close here. And so now you can see that this is a parent container. And so all of my accounting approvals are going to have to go here. So I am going to have to make child activities for 2.3 accounting approval. And I don't really know what accounting approvals look like, but we will just call this I don't think I think I do have a vendor payment. So we'll call this AP approval. And so this will be our accounts payable approval. And I am going to need a needed when for this as well for AP, because if I am paying someone, it needs to go through AP. If someone is paying me, it needs to go to AR. So the type of process that is going to be running is going to determine whether or not this particular activity runs. Now, unfortunately, I did not grab the Excel file. I probably should have. I think I have it here. Give me a second. Let me go into It's not there. I don't see it. I thought I had it here. Invoices, groups, users. No, it is not. Let's see if I have it open here in my doc folder. Desktop. Let's get rid of that. Go to doc. Function processes.xlsx. Here we go. So here are my processes. Okay, here are the functions which we looked at, and happily AC is the accounting function. Yay. And here are my processes. So in accounting, I have these processes right here. So I've got a purchase request. Well, that's obviously AP. And a purchase order. Well, that's probably AP. On the other hand, I do have a vendor payment. That is VP, and expense report is EX. Travel request is TR. I don't think those go to accounts. Well, they may go to accounts payable. I don't know. I'm not an accountant. But for right now, we will just say that if it is a PR, if it's a purchase request, that needs to go to accounts payable. If it's a vendor payment, that will need to go to accounts receivable. So I have two different activities that are only going to run on certain processes. So right now we're looking at AP approval. So we are going to go with purchase request, and we're going to run purchase request through AP. I should probably run a lot more through AP, which I could do. We'll do both PR and PO for this one. So we'll create our condition for AP approval, and we're just going to make two conditions. And this time, once again, we're going to have to go to value and string because we're going to have to use system variables to make all of this work. But in this case, we are going to use process. So our process field will have to evaluate that, and it will have to equal either PR or purchase request, right? PR and PO. So those are my two. So once again, here we'll do the same thing. String, and we'll look at the process field. And this time we just have to ensure that the string is PO. Okay, so when I submit my form, if it's going to be a purchase request or a purchase order, then my AP approval activity will run. And so I still need to set results for this. Obviously, I need to have my prove, deny, prove. We'll set that as 1. Resubmit. Got to have that one to make my loop work. Resubmit. We'll set that as 2. And then we have our deny, which we will set as button 3 on the form. And I'm setting those button orders so that I always have the same button order on the form as we've talked about before. All right, there's my AP approval. Now, it's only going to run under those particular conditions. I don't know that there's ever a time when AP and AR are both running in the same process, accounts payable and accounts receivable. As I said, I'm not an accountant. So I'm going to go ahead and make them run in sequence. So I will create my next activity, and basically I'm just trying to, show how long the segments are. So I'm just going to make it dependent. It may never happen, but I'm just going to call it AR approval. And This is, again, going to be a user activity. Now, I haven't set participants. They're all set to timeline initiator. There's a method to my madness, but I am going to have to set some participants here. But let's get this segment done, and we'll get back to that. So we'll just keep all participants as timeline initiator, largely because whenever I run it, it's all going to be assigned to me, but there are going to be some differences there, and we'll talk about those in a second. I am going to need my 3 results. So we'll do them in reverse this time. We'll do deny 3. Resubmit with button order of 2. And approve with a button order of 1. Now I'm going to need a needed when here. And again, I'm going to do the same thing. Although in this case, it's just going to be a vendor payment is also outgoing money as well, but we're going to pretend that we're going to pretend that this is a payment to me. VP is going to be a payment to me. So vendor payment, the code is VP. So we're going to set our needed when here. Value string. That's what I'm looking for. And again, we're looking at the process field. And string again. So we're doing a lot of string comparisons. And so we're going to assume that vendor payment goes to AR. So we'll close that. I'm just going to update this so I don't lose anything. Now, I've got 2 different approvals. I could go and make all of these way more complicated. I am not gonna. What I am gonna do is I am gonna create the segments for IT. And for now, I'm just gonna go ahead and create the parent activity. Excuse me, the parent activities themselves. I need 3 of them. 1, 2, 3. And all of these activities are going to need to be dependent on my supervisor approval. So I'm just going to go ahead and set all of those dependents on supervisor or dependencies on supervisor approval. What did I just move that? I just moved it. I didn't want to move it. I wanted to set the dependents supervisor approval. There we go. And once again, supervisor approval. So all of my parent activities start at the right time. So once again, we'll call this IT approval, and we will make it a parent activity. Again, we're not going to do any looping in it. I mean, I suppose we could, but we're just not going to, because why make it any more complex than it has to be? It's already pretty complex. We are going to need a needed when condition. And again, we're going to need to evaluate the function. And this time, since we're evaluating the functions, let's take a look at them. HR, IT, and facilities is FC. Okay, so this is IT, I guess. So we will set our string there, and we'll look at our function field. And we will set the function to equal IT. Close, that's IT approval. And then we'll go to activity 2.5, which we will call facilities approval. And since we're here at the start or needed when condition, we'll just do the same thing. We'll go back here and string. Well, got to spell it right to make it work. And this function has to equal string. Did I say this was facilities? Yes, I did say this was facilities. So FC is my needed when there. And this activity, obviously a parent activity, just like IT approval. And then activity 2.6, again, we're going to make it a parent activity. And it will need its needed when. And this time we want the function to be IT. And string IT. And we'll close that. So now I have all of my 4 functions that I need set up. Now, each one of these functions is only going to run whenever I select the appropriate function on the form. So let me hit OK. Let me save this. Let's go back and look at our form template, or let's run our form template. So in its plain vanilla version, when I run the form template, and I guess I need to set disabled fields as texts too. When I run my template, I have to select whether it's accounting, facilities, human resources. I don't think I did HR. But for each of my functions, I've got specific processes. And that's what is driving how my process timeline works. Again, it doesn't matter whether I submit this form or copy 50 of it, as long as I have a facilities and a process field on that form. My process timeline will know what form is attached to it and will be able, via system variable, to evaluate that form field and to pull the data back from that form field. And so that makes it much easier to figure out how all of this is supposed to work. I did IT approval. What did I do down here? Oh, this is HR approval. I didn't configure this right. So for HR approval, the function needs to be, of course, HR. Now, in the real world, I would, for each of these parent activities, place the accounting or HR or IT individual user tasks inside each of these activities. And so therefore, accounting approval is not going to run unless I am in the accounting function, which means IT, facilities, and HR always going to be skipped. So they'll never run. This will only run me through the accounting approvals. In the accounting approvals themselves, I did not want to do whatever it was that I just did. Sorry, I need to refresh this. I think I moved something inadvertently with my mouse. Once my accounting approval starts, so once it looks at the form and it says, okay, our function is AC. So this is an accounting function. So I'm now going to run this segment of my process timeline. Great. Now it's going to go to the individual activities. Well, each of these individual activities also have their own needed when conditions if necessary. So, for example, AP approval can only run if it's a purchase request or a purchase order. AR approval will only run if it is a vendor payment. I could also have, however many other approval activities I need inside this process timeline to make my other accounting activities work, and I could order them in whatever order I need to so that I have the appropriate accounting and ultimately IT and facilities. And wow, I just keep not configuring this. HR, and it's called HR approvals. And this time, I'm going to update the process timeline so I have that configuration saved. So it is going to run through all of these activities in the proper order. And what I should probably do is throw in a one user activity and all in IT, facilities, and HR, just so that they run. I'll do that later, because I don't think we're gonna. It's already 11 o'clock. I don't think we're going to get to the point where we're running this process timeline this week. We're probably going to have to come back and finish it next week. But what I'll do over the week is I'll finish configuring this and I'll flesh it out fully, and we'll take a look at it next week. Because right now we need to talk about task assignments. I've got everything set to assign to me. My task assignments for most of these activities are not going to be a problem, because I'm just going to go and I'm going to assign to a group or business rule, whatever it is, whatever your normal method of assignment is, that's going to work for most of these activities, but not for all of them. Because I do have two activities that I'm going to have to assign via system variable on my form. One of them is my supervisor approval activity. And another one is something that we placed on the form last week and didn't talk much about, but that we are going to have to talk about this week. And that is going to be our ad hoc approvers. Because I know that I have to go through certain processes if it's an HR deal, and certain processes if it's an IT deal, and they're all going to be different, and that's fine. But I may also have some ad hoc approvers that I want to add. Extra people that I want to include in the process, whoever they may be. So I'm going to create an activity here, and I'm going to call it ad hoc, and I didn't want to do that. So let me remove that activity, and let me create another dependent activity. And this is going to be my next activity. Now, this is going to be my ad hoc approvers activity. And for my start when, for my dependencies, I'm going to have to add a couple of dependencies on here. I appear to have done something wrong again. Remove that activity. 2, create child activity. Did I just create it as a dependent activity? Is that what I did? Maybe it is. So this is what I want. Activity 2.7, ad hoc approvals. And we need to add basically 4 dependencies here, because I have 4 possible parent segments that might run. So I need to set it dependent on accounting approval, IT approval, facilities approval, and HR approval. So all of those have to be done before activity 2.7 can begin. So if I click on it now, you can see it is dependent on accounting, IT, facilities, and HR approvals. So they all have to be done before my ad hoc approvals can start. Now, again, in the real world, only one of these 4 segments is ever going to run, because I'm going to pick one of 4 functions. So to make my ad hoc approvals happen after all of these, I have to make it dependent on all of them. But now we come to the problem of setting up how the ad hoc approvals are going to work, and also how supervisor approval is going to work. So let me get out of the process timeline for a second. Let's go back to our form template and take a look at it. So on my form template, I have a supervisor user picker. That is its name, supervisor, which I am going to copy so you won't have to watch me type it. So I'm going to want to pull my supervisor user picker out of here and grab whatever the value is, and that's who I want to assign the task to. Additionally, down here on the bottom, I have this ad hoc approvers user picker. Now, these ad hoc approvers, they're not required. I might not have any at all, but if I want to have some additional approvers, I have an ad hoc approver step where they can perform their actions. So I need to be able to assign that as well. I also have a process manager, which is a user picker as well. And I'm going to need a process manager approval as well. Now, don't take the order in which I'm assigning these as gospel. You might do it differently. You might have your process manager look it over before it even gets to any of the individual function segments in the process timeline. I'm going to throw it in after. The order is not important, but the way of being able to do these assignments is important. Now, process manager is going to be a little tricky. Process manager can be a different manager for each one of my processes. To make my timeline configuration easy, and I have two ways of doing this. But let's talk about that when we talk about process manager. Let's dispense with supervisor and ad hoc approvers. Then we'll worry about the process manager. I think that would be a little more logical. So let's go back over here. So again, my form fields are supervisor and ad hoc approvers. Those are my two form fields. So in my unified approval process, my supervisor approval. Now, if you have a system set up where all of your supervisors are part of your user profiles, then you could actually just pull this information off the user profile and you don't have to worry about a supervisor form field at all. Most of you aren't set up that way, so most of your employees don't have supervisors. So we have a user picker on the form so that the employee can pick someone as their supervisor. Normally, what you would do is you would just assign the task via form field on the participants tab. We can't do that. We can't do any sort of form field assignment. Once again, form field system variables are going to be our best friend. So we're going to have to assign via system variable. And so this is the supervisor. So in this case, we need to use the supervisor field, but this is a user picker. Technically, the value that a user picker stores is the UID for each user. However, unlike other form fields, simply because of how you generally use user pickers, the UID isn't helpful for you. It isn't helpful to display it. It's always better to display the user's name. So unlike, say, a dropdown or a list box, where the default value they want to return is the actual value. So like our function dropdown, if I see accounting as the text, it will not return accounting as the value. It will return AC. User pickers are a bit different. They want to return the name of the user. In system variables, that is remarkably unhelpful. We don't want to use that. So we are going to need to use a formatter. We are going to need to format equals UID. This will force the system variable to return the user's UID. That is important because that is how users are identified in Process Director. So if I want to assign a task to a user, I have to know what their user UID is because that uniquely identifies the user in the system. The name does not. So I can't just go looking for, John Smith and expect that there's only one John Smith in the world because I know that's not true. So I got to use that UID. So that format equals UID, and people forget this a lot. In fact, I do get tech support questions on a more or less regular basis where people say, hey, I'm trying to use the form field for a user picker and it's not working and it's not grabbing my stuff. And the first question is always, okay, using a user picker system variable. So are you formatting it to the UID? Well, no. Well, you have to, because that's just how user pickers work. It didn't used to work that way. And we changed it because this is one of those things where we're in a darned if you do and darned if you don't position. Half of the user base says, I want the user picker to return the UID. The other half of the user base says, I want the user picker to return the name of the user. What is the default return? I think the default return was the UID, and everybody got confused, or at least some users got confused because they're like, what, showing me all this garbledy numbers and letters thing. I need to know the name of the user. So we changed the behavior. And so it's made one set of people happy and another set of people equally unhappy. So it's one of those decisions that no matter what we do, it's not going to be the right decision for about half of you. Currently, however, user picker system variables return the name, not the UID. So you have to force it with format UID. Now, the nice thing about this is, however, when we get down to ad hoc approvals, because we are going to have to set that via form field as well, or form field system variable rather. So we are going to need to choose system variable, and that field is ad hoc approvers, but that field is also an array, but we don't really care as long as we format equals UID on the system variable. And well, again, my typing is bad when I'm standing up and talking at the same time, but this is just going to return a comma separated list of UIDs. And as far as the system is concerned, that's fine. As we saw last week when I ran the demo, if I have a couple of ad hoc approvers, I can just assign those ad hoc approvers and everything just works hunky dunky no matter how many people I choose in ad hoc approvers. So we're going to set those by form field system variable. But now let's create another child activity. I did it right that time. And we're going to make this dependent on our ad hoc approvals. And we're just going to call this Process Manager Review. Who is our process manager? Now, for the process timeline, I can do this one of two ways, by the way. I'm going to do it via form field, but I'm also going to have to do something a little funky to the form field to make that form field work, because that is going to need to be auto-filled from, in my case, a business rule. And I'm going to have to go through all of my processes in that business rule, and I'm going to have to figure out what user is going to have to be assigned. I'm going to use a business rule to set the value of the form field. I could use the business rule here because I'm going to have to use a parameterized business rule. I'm going to have to pass it the value from the function, or I'm sorry, the process field. And then based on that parameter, I'm going to return a user based on what the process code is. I could do that here, or I can do it in the form. I'm actually going to do it in the form simply to make the configuration of the process timeline a little bit easier. So for now, we are going to go for system variable, and I believe the field is process manager. And once again, format equals UID. And that will set the value from that process manager form field that we looked at earlier. But now, in order to provide the appropriate value for that on the form, we're going to go ahead and update. Well, I could have just hit OK, I guess. We're going to have to go back to our form template. And we're going to have to use a business rule to to set a value. So here's what I need to know. On my form, I need to know what the process is. And based on the process that I select, I need to fill out this process manager. To do that, I'm going to have to run a business rule to make that happen. And I'm going to have to do it via a set form data action. So my function field is an event field. Needs to be an event field because I need to be able to refresh the form to, based on my selection in function, to fill out the appropriate processes. Well, process needs to be an event field as well, because I'm going to need to run a set form data on the process event to grab whoever the process manager is to fill out this user picker control here. So I'm going to actually go into the field properties of this user picker because I don't want the users to select that. I want that to be filled automatically. So I am going to disable this field, and I'm just going to have to set it up programmatically whenever I select this process here. Now, to make this work, I'm going to need a parameterized business rule because I'm going to need to evaluate all of the processes, and I'm going to need to, whatever process I select, return the appropriate process manager. Now, it's going to look super stupid because I'm going to be the process manager for all of it. Otherwise, you're going to have to watch me whenever we finally get around to testing this thing. You're going to have to watch me, impersonate users over and over and over. So rather than do that, I'm just going to make myself, for most of the processes, I'm going to make myself the process manager. I may sneak Barb or Diana into a couple of them, but that means I need a business rule. So we're going to go into data and we're going to put it there. I would put it somewhere else. I might have a subfolder called business rules. That would be fine too. But the other thing that we have to remember is our folder position is super important as to where we place these objects. Because at the end of the day, what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to be able to go into my templates folder and export this UAP form template. And then I'm going to need to re-import it into the forms folder. So wherever I place an object inside this folder, this webinar folder at the moment, that's my parent folder. So anytime I place an object in this folder, it has to be in the exact same relative location so that if I have to make a link to it, I know where that object is. Now, happily, because this is a business rule, and I'm going to have to access it via system variable, that's not quite as important. But normally, if I was being really anal about it, I would have to have a subfolder for supporting objects. But I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go ahead and throw it here in data. So I'm going to create a new business rule. And I'm going to call it get PM by process, get PM by process. So it's going to get the process manager by process. Great. We're happy with that. We'll group it in value picker as UAP. And let's give ourselves an update. We're not going to associate this business rule with any form or with any workflow. Because we're making a parameterized business rule, it's not going to be able to be associated with any specific object. Technically, I should probably not place this business rule here. The only reason I'm doing it in this case is because if I need to export it, and in fact, this is the sample process, so I'll never export it. So in the real world, what I would probably do, because this is going to be a parameterized business rule, parameterized business rules are almost without exception global objects because I can access them just by calling them by system variable and passing the variable of the parameter, whatever the value of the parameter is, passing it to them. So I can call them from anywhere. So technically, I shouldn't even put it in this data folder. Technically, where I should be putting it is in a system folder like this one that's called business rules, where it contains all of my global business rules. This is where I should actually put it, but because I have to export it, obviously I've chosen a different path. But just remember, this would probably be a global object, so you'd want to save it as a global object. That aside, now we got to figure out what we're going to do here. This can get super tedious, so I'm only going to do a partial configuration on this, and then we're just going to look at the business rule that I built, and we'll take a look at how it looks. But to configure it, first I'm going to need a parameter, and so I'm going to call this parameter process ID. I forget what I called it in the other one, but for now we'll call it process ID. I'm going to need to return the first user matching a condition. Remember, I want to return a user. So I'm going to pick a user. So for right now, let's just say Diana. This is not how it's going to end up being configured, but let's just say I'm going to return Diana Stewart. But when am I going to return Diana Stewart? Well, this is why I have that process ID. What I'm going to do when I invoke this business rule is I'm going to invoke it via system variable, and I'm going to have to pass a parameter to it. So what I'm actually going to evaluate in the body of the returns section is the parameter that I'm going to pass to it. So I don't care what form it comes from. I'm not connected to a form or a process timeline. I can call it from anywhere as long as I can call it via system variable and I can pass a parameter to it. So I'm going to have to evaluate the parameter. Once again, we're going to have to do all of this via system variables. This is why system variables are your friends. And they're probably more your friend than you know, because we think of using system variables in really limited context. To build a unified approval system the way that we're building it, what we really need to do is depend on them to provide us almost all of our pass-through context from one object to another. Happily, because of the way that objects are associated in Process Director, all of this just works as long as we get the right system variable set. So in this case, we are evaluating a parameter. And we can call it param, parameter, whatever. Param is short, so I usually just use that. But I mean, technically, that's the full formal name of the system variable. So parameter, and it is process ID. So that is our parameter we're evaluating. And we have, of course, several different processes. In fact, we have 17 different processes. So I am going to need to repeat what we're doing here 17 different times to make all of this work. So in this case, we want our parameter. Again, we're doing all string comparisons here. So we'll say LR. So if it's a leave request, there it is. There's our parameter, process ID equals LR. So if this is a leave request, it's going to go to Diana Stewart. And we just have to repeat this 16 more times. So for me, we'll pick Barb here in this case. And the condition that we'll set up here, and I really should have copied this to make our lives a little bit easier so you don't have to watch me type. So in this case, we'll add our condition. And once again, we are doing a string value. And we have to know whether our parameter for our process ID, in this case, more HR stuff, this will be a name change. So again, we'll go to string, and a name change in C is the code for that. And we just repeat this process over and over again, selecting different users until we get all 17 processes. So rather than watch me do that, let's pretend, let me copy that real quick. Let's pretend that I have spent the time with you sitting there bored watching me, and that's not what I wanted to do. Let's pretend that I have configured that particular business rule. What am I doing? Why am I not just deleting it? Thank you. What we're going to do is we're going to go up here into, I guess I put it in supporting objects instead of data, but that's fine. We're going to copy that, and we're going to come back down here to data, and we're going to copy it there. And I'm going to change the name to get PM by process. And there we go. We're going to pretend that I configured all 17 of these rows. Now, as I said, it's all going to be me because I'm going to have to demo this eventually. But each one of these is now set up for my my process. And now the parameter is process, not process ID, but same thing. All of these are configured. Now I've got to be able to call this. Now, the way that I decided to do this was to do this inside the form, to set the value of the form based on this, this business value or business rule. But I should probably change a couple of them. So let's see what we have here. We have CS customer support. That's going to me. These are not really in order, but let's do customer support. Let's assign that to Diana. And let's assign in C, which is an HR name change. Let's assign that to Barb. Barb. And let's assign NE to Eric, just to have some different users. And all the rest will be assigned to me, and that way I'll just have to know what to pick. Did I not choose Eric? I guess I didn't. There we go. Now we're all set. So if it is customer service, it's going to be Diana. If it's a name change, it's going to be Barb Stanley. And what is NE? New equipment request. It's going to go to Eric. Okay, fine. So now I have an idea of who's going to do what. Most of it is going to be me, obviously. I now have my business rule. Now I have to make this business rule work in my process or in my form to assign the value that I need for my process manager field that we looked at earlier. So we're going to go back over here to set form data. And because my process is an event, it should be an event, but since I apparently didn't update it after making it an event, we'll go back to the form controls tab. We'll go back over here to process. We'll make it an event field and we'll update our form. And now we'll go back to set form data and I should have a process event. I do. We'll add that action. And now I will set the value of my process manager. I'm going to have to set it via system variable. So we're going to have to go to value string, and I'm going to have to set my rule. Now it's called get PM by process. So we're going to call rule get PM by process. And now we need to add our parameter to pull the value. We'll get PM by process, our parameter. We need a $sign. And I'm going to need to send him the function. I'm not entirely sure I have that syntax right. So let me real quickly go to, just need to be sure that I get this right. Implementation, director objects. Oh, that's not what I want. No, that is what I want. Business rules, because we have the parameterized business rule somewhere in here. Business rule parameter name equals. Okay, that's what I have to do. See, I didn't have it right. It's a good thing that I checked on myself. What we want to see is process equals function, and that should give me my value back. Now I'm setting the value of process manager, which is a user picker. So I've called the rule. It's going to return the user, but I've got to be sure to be able to set this value that I set this to the UID of the user. So whenever that business rule returns the user object to me, I'm going to need to use it to set the value of this user picker. And to do that, I am once again going to have to format it as UID. And so one more quick check just to be sure I got that right. Yes, I did get that right. So where's my box? There it is right there. So rule get PM by process, pass the process parameter to it. That's got to equal the function field in the form, and it's going to return it back in the UID format. So we'll set that and we will update our field. Great. So now if we update and run our form, we're going to do our first test, see if I've configured this right. Process manager. This is what we're looking at. So let's go with human resources and let's select name change. And it didn't grab my value. Syntax is always a little tricky on here. So let me go ahead and just look at my other form, because happily, I've done all this before. Rule, process manager, process, format equals UID. So this should be right. I was pretty sure it was right. Rule, get PM by process. Ah, well, it helps when you're setting the value of the parameter to set it to the process and not to the function, because the function codes and the process codes are all different. So I think that is my major malfunction in configuration. So let's try this again. Let's try human resources and let's try name change. There we go. There's Barb Stanley. That's what we wanted to see. And if it is a new equipment request, so that's an IT deal. So if we go to information technology and we go to new equipment request, that should be Eric. And finally, if it is was it a leave request? I think it was a leave request. Human resources leave request. Oh, no, that's me. I was trying to grab Diana, but unfortunately I've forgotten what it was that I assigned Diana to. And all the rest of them are going to be me unless I cleaning service, or was it new facilities request? Nope, they're all me. So to see someone else, I guess we're going to have to go back to information technology and new equipment request, and we can see there's Eric Wintemute. So now I'm filling this field via that business variable or business rule variable. I'm doing it to fill the field here. I don't have to do it that way. I don't have to show the process manager on this form at all, even though I've made it a required field. I could skip this field totally. This is an implementation choice I made just so that we could see something happening, largely so you could see it happening live like we just did. But I don't actually need this field on the form. On the process timeline itself, when I am looking at the process manager review, there is nothing that prevents me from using that business rule system variable right here without having to have a field on the form at all. I don't have to go through those two hoops. It is helpful, however, from a experience point of view, user experience point of view. It's helpful to show it on the form. Now we're getting into my opinion rather than the absolute truth, but I think it's more helpful to do it on the form than it is to do it here. Doing it here is admittedly cleaner. Not having the form field on the form, not having the set form data action have to run, not having the event on that field, all of those reduce the overhead of the form. From a technical perspective, those are all good things. And technically, using that business rule system variable right here is going to work for me. It's more efficient, admittedly. It's not as straightforward, though. And it removes the information, or removes at least some information that would normally be available to the user. As far as the user experience goes, and look, your mileage may vary on this and you may have a different opinion about this, and that's perfectly fine. But it does seem to me that when I'm running this form, even if, and let's do two things. First, let's show disabled fields as text here, and let's go to that process manager field and let's disable it because I forgot to save that as part of the form. Field is disabled. Okay, great. So now when I run this form from a user perspective, now my process manager is empty down here. From a user perspective, it is helpful if I know that when I pick name change, it's going to throw Barb Stanley there. So I know who the process manager is. So I know who's going to do the review. It's just more information for me, the user, to let me know how this process is going to work. Obviously, I'm going to have to pick my own supervisor, which would be me, of course. But I want my process to run in the proper way. And at the same time, this helps the user to know how the process runs. Maybe you feel different. We're not going to argue about it. That's how I've implemented it here. But you don't have to implement it this way. The nice thing about the use of system variables, as extensively as we're having to use them to make this work, is that it gives you options. So I could make the form work this way, or I could just remove the process manager entirely and just use that system variable to set it here here in the process timeline when I am setting the participant for the process manager review here. Now, everything I have is going to run at this point. However, I don't have any activities in IT, facilities, and HR approval. I've done as much building from scratch as I'm comfortable doing this week. It's also 11:41. So I tell you what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and stop it at this point. I now have a form that is more or less fully configured, and I have a process timeline that is mainly configured, but not entirely configured. So it would be best, I think, if we stop here. I'm going to go ahead and flesh out this process timeline by adding in IT, facilities, and HR approval activities that are assigned to actual people. And next week, we'll start off, since we have our form, and next week we'll have our process timeline completely built out from this sample that I built live today. We'll start off by testing and ensuring that we're going through the process as well, because I think there's a couple of other little wrinkles we're going to want to discuss about some of these activities that are inside each of the individual segments. So we'll cover that next week. Also next week, we have to start getting into this email template to make it's going to be a relatively complex email template. Again, we're going to have to use a lot of system variables to evaluate what is going on in our process and what it is that we want to show in our email template. But we're not going to have time to do that this week. So we'll just have to look at that next week. So our thing next week will be to, I think, finish off the Unified Approval series. So that third episode, I think, will be our last one. For now, we'll say goodbye. We'll talk to you all again next Thursday. Have a great weekend and a great week after that. Until we meet again, so long.